Hello, and welcome, my fellow basement gardeners. In this episode, you'll see part 2 of the 6-shooter Autoflower, where she progresses from day 20 to day 59. The 6-shooter day 1 to 20 video is labeled as How I Grow Episode 7. Throughout this video, the 6-shooter will be low-stress trained a few times, until she starts to bloom. Then, she will have a few light defoliations, and her nutrients will be transitioned to the bloom nutrients. Afterwards, I'll show you the final progression for both the Bubblegum Autoflower and the Jackherer Auto. The entire progression is available to view and are listed as episode 4, 5, 6, and episode 8 of the How I Grow videos. Make sure to check them out if you'd like to see it all from start to finish. On day 22, I start off by removing the 2 lowest leaves, which are no longer needed. I then water her with 2 liters of dechlorinated tap water with 2 mils of Florinova Grow mixed in. The solution is then pH adjusted downwards to be between 5.8 and 6 pH. While I'm watering the plant, I just want to give a big thank you to Spiderfarmer for sponsoring this video. Make sure to use code BASEMENT for a discount. Before I start with the low stress training, I remove a few of the inward facing leaves, which will be blocking nodes and making it harder to see what I'm doing. Now that this lower leaf has been tied down, I go ahead and remove the 2 leaves and the 2 nodes from its base. These nodes are too close to the center of the plant and are the lowest in the canopy. They will struggle to keep up with the rest. I'll keep these 2 nodes on the upper branch because they're further away from the center of the plant and they're in the upper canopy. It's important to take your time with low stress training. One false move can cause disaster. When you're checking the flexibility of your branches, it's good to stroke them like the cat's chin. Going this way is good, going the other way can cause harm. Two days later, on day 24, I'm noticing a few leaves that are causing some overlap. The last thing that I want for the nodes that I'm trying to nurture is for them to be hidden from the light. I removed this little branch because it's growing from the underside of the branch. This one is too. I've got 3 heads in my hand, but there's 4 main branches. There's 1 more to go. Gotcha. Two days later, on day 26, it is now 4 days since the last watering. From the 2 top branches, I remove the node which is between the main branches and will cluster the canopy. I then water the plant with 3 liters, which contains 3 mils of Florinova Grow, pH'd to be between 5.8 and 6. I've also noticed that the 2 lower branches also have central nodes, which will be clustering the canopy. I've noticed that a few of the branches have some staggered growth. This is a sign that she's thinking about blooming. It's 3 days later, which is day 29 for the 6-shooter auto. For today's session, I'm going to need to prepare a few extra training stakes from my roll of 9-gauge plastic coated wire, which I got from the chain link fence section of Home Hardware. Before I do low stress training, I like the growing medium to be moist, so I water the plant with 3 liters, which contains 3 mils of Florinova Grow, pH'd to be between 5.8 and 6. Keep an eye on this branch that I'm tying down right here. You'll see as I progress to the next branch that it gains a little extra tension and starts to slip out. This branch is going to need a little bit more tension down lower to take tension off the top of the branch. I start to notice that the branch has slipped down a little bit, so I start adding extra tension lower down the branch to give it some support. After I'm satisfied with the low stress training, I then remove a few of the leaves that are central to the plant and are going to be shading the nodes that I want to have priority to the light. I also remove a few of the leaves that are now going to be shaded by the nodes and aren't going to be needed anymore. Oh, she's getting close. Four days later, on day 33, it's become clear to me that she's in week 1 of bloom. The growth is all staggered, and the top nodes have a different look to them, which includes a lot of hairs. I didn't feel like this plant needed a defoliation in week 1 of bloom, so I just tucked a few of the leaves out of the way. I then water the plant with 4 liters, which contains 4 mils of Florinova Grow, pH'd to be between 5.8 and 6. Four days later, on day 37, I'm happy with how the plant is looking. I don't do any trimming or training, and I just water the plant with 4 liters of about 4 to 5 mils of Florinova Bloom around pH 6. It's now 5 days later, and the plant is now on day 42. I haven't touched this plant since the last watering. Her growing medium is dry again, and ready for another dosage. Today, she'll be watered with 6 liters, which contains 6 mils of Florinova Bloom, pH to be around 6. After she's been watered, I then scrounge through the canopy and remove a few leaves that are blocking bud sites, and I remove a few of the lower leaves that aren't receiving much light. And that's her end of week 2 bloom defoliation completed. Well, almost. This one's also looking at me funny. Five days later, on day 47, there's a lot more room in the garden. The Bubblegum and the Jackherer Autoflower have both been harvested, but we'll get to that soon. First, we need to deal with the 6-shooter's dry growing medium. I mix up 6 liters with 6 mils of Florinova Bloom mixed in, at around pH 6, and send it in. You may have noticed that the pH of the solution was actually 6.3. I wanted to see how the plant would react to a slightly higher pH, and I was also feeling a little bit tired, so I got a bit lazy. There was a little bit of runoff, but I didn't bother to remove it because there was barely any. It would evaporate in no time. Four days later, on day 51, I go ahead and water her with another 6 liters of 6 mils Florinova Bloom, but this time at pH 6. Four more days later, and I'm really starting to notice those buds are bulking up nicely. The growing medium is dry again, so I water her with around 7 or 8 liters of water with around 8 to 10 mils of Florinova Bloom mixed in. With the higher dosage, I'm starting to get a little bit more runoff. It's ideal to have around 10 to 20% runoff when your pots are fully rooted. I should be watering between 8 to 10 liters of water to get enough runoff for these size pots. This will ensure that fresh nutrients are being flowed through the growing medium. The runoff ppm is a little high but not bad. Runoff pH is just fine. Four days later, on day 59, the growing medium is dry once again. She's ready for another dosage. Oh, not her. You'll have to wait to see her progression. She's coming soon. The buds are deep into the bulking phase of growth, and it won't be long now, around 4 weeks, until her buds are ready for harvest. In 8 liters of dechlorinated tap water, I mix in 8 mils of Florinova Bloom and make sure the pH is around 6. With the 8-liter dosage, I'm starting to get the right amount of runoff to maintain a healthy root environment for the plant. This concludes this section of the video about the 6-shooter Autoflower. I hope you enjoyed her progression. Up next, we'll finish off the Bubblegum and Jackherer Autoflowers. Then we'll harvest and dry them and see what our final yield for each plant is. A lot of people like to get the fancy bags for curing their buds, but I prefer to use the standard food grade freezer Ziploc bags. They can hold a lot of bud and are very easy to maintain. Just gotta be careful not to suffocate. I don't mind if my bud is a little bit more on the dry side. It's safer this way for long-term storage. Hey, what do you... What happened? Oh, it doesn't smell like cannabis in here at all. When the tent is closed, the Spiderfarmer inline fan does a great job to remove any odors. But inside the tent, it smells dank. A big thank you to Spiderfarmer for sponsoring this video. Make sure to use code BASEMENT for a discount off products from the Spiderfarmer website or from Amazon. I'm running my SF4000 at 80% to give my seedlings around 600 ppfd at 40 inches distance, while blooming plants are around 20 inches away, getting about 1000 ppfd. I'm currently running my inline fan in the always on mode at speed 6 of 10. My temperature inside the tent is around 24 degrees Celsius, and I have about 40% humidity. If you're considering to build or upgrade your garden, consider Spiderfarmer. Make sure to use code BASEMENT for the discount. The Jackherer is bulking up fast, but her buds aren't getting as thick as I'd like. I think that they are a bit too close to the light. You can't have everything when you're growing all different stages of growth inside the same tent. I'll have to raise the light and then give my other plants a booster seed to get them back into the right zone of intensity, which I just can't do right now. After topping up a reservoir, I check the ppm and pH of the water. The ppm is a little bit low, the pH is also a bit low. Because this plant is already a little bit unhappy looking, I figured I'd try something out. and used the old Cool Bloom that I found in my closet. This is a PK booster, and honestly I don't think it really helped much. It probably made things worse. pH was at around 4.3, so I used some pH up to bring it back up to around 5.8. It's 4 days later, and I'm sure the reservoir is ready to be topped up again. Yeah, she's getting a bit low. The pH is a little bit low, so add a little bit of pH up to bring it back up to around 5.8. Ooh, damn. She's got them thunder thighs. Four days later, at day 78, you guessed it, she needs more water. I was starting to regret my decision about adding that bloom booster, so I figured I'd mix her up a fresh batch of nutrients. Using the wire that I cut as a guide for the perfect water level, I top up the fresh bucket with fresh dechlorinated tap water. There's around 20 liters of water here, so I add 20 mils of Florinova Bloom. You know you've mixed the perfect ratio when you don't need to adjust the pH, and it turns out perfectly at 5.8. The Bubblegum Autoflower is getting really close. Her growing medium is dry. And, well, first I think it's time to check the trichomes. I'm seeing a few amber trichomes. I'm seeing a lot of clear trichomes though. You want to have all milky and about 5 to 30% amber trichomes. The more I look, the more amber I see though. She is definitely really close. With the amount of amber I'm seeing, I'd be happy to harvest right now. To have her harvest line up with my schedule just a little bit better, I'm going to give her one more watering cycle and harvest her when the growing medium dries out. To finish her off, I water her with 8 liters of dechlorinated tap water. The Jackherer has been drinking lots of water, but to make her line up with my schedule, I'm going to go ahead and harvest her too, alongside the Bubblegum. So I top up a fresh reservoir of dechlorinated tap water and transfer the plant over. been about 6 days since the Jackherer was topped up, and about 10 to 11 days since the Bubblegum was last watered with the dechlorinated tap water. Her time has come. To check the trichomes, I use a 20x clip-on macro lens for my phone. Then I record video while trying to get the trichomes into focus. We had quite the journey with this plant. It's a little bit sad to see her go. This plant was not topped. She was low stress trained, defoliated, lollipopped. When she was around week 2 to 3 of bloom, she was super cropped. She then had some light defoliations, which brings us to here. A nice flat canopy, where each bud is of similar quality of the next bud. To dry my plants, I use the same plastic coated wire that I use for low stress training, but I bend it into a slightly different shape to hang the bud from the top of my tent. I like to do a wet trim on my bud. It makes it a lot easier to do the trim, and it'll dry just a little bit quicker. As far as density goes, she passes the squish test for me. Oh, it's so nice working on small plants. I'm really not looking forward to harvesting this monster. This one's gonna take forever. My house is gonna stink. Here we can see where this branch was super cropped and had folded over itself. And the final branch. It's always a mix of emotions for me. I feel happy that I've had a successful harvest, but also sad that it's over for this plant. I also feel relieved that I'm now free from trim jail. All of the trim gathered from the harvest, I'm gonna go straight into the freezer next to my chicken nuggets. Although the Jackherer was a bit younger than the Bubblegum plant, I felt it was her time. The nugs were looking great, and her density of branches was extreme. This could become an issue, and I don't want to risk my healthy harvest to bud rot. The buds are looking great for me, so I'm happy. Most of the hairs were amber, so I know she's starting to mature, although the trichomes are probably not as amber as the Bubblegum's trichomes were, but it's good to have a variety of buds, some that are more heavy and some that are a little bit more light. Anyways, there's no going back now. I've already cut the roots off from the plant. This plant also wasn't topped. She was the mutant Jackherer plant, that started off really funny, then started to grow in pretty strong. Her lower nodes really took over. Near the end of veg, she was super cropped on this branch here, and the rest of the branches were low stress trained. You know the bud is potent when after the second branch, your scissors are acting like this. Now that I'm about halfway through this harvest, you can really see the density of this plant's growth. There's really solid growth coming out the top, and some pretty larvae growth in the center that's really blocking airflow. Although I prefer nice dense bud, there's nothing wrong with some larvae bud. It still carries really nice potency, and it still yields that can be used for edibles or making concentrates. If I really wanted this plant to thrive longer and bloom, I would have needed to lollipop more off to be able to maintain the health of this plant. With a canopy this dense, she's going to be choking herself out, really risking bud rot in the center of the canopy. A slightly lesser harvest is better than no harvest at all. Some of these really small larvae nugs, I'm just going to cut them off and throw them into the trim bucket. It won't be counted towards the total yield, but it will still be useful material to use in the future. These top buds definitely have some nice density to them. Ooh, we got a lot of trim from this plant. It's about half a bucket full. We had a good run with the Jackherer. Jackherer is actually the first strain that I grew successfully when I started growing about 8 years ago. Looks like a little swamp dude with a diaper. All of the trim from this plant gets packaged up into a freezer bag and gets stored into the freezer. While I'm hang drying my plants, I can expect them to take about 5 to 7 days, while at 23 degrees Celsius, 43% humidity. You know the buds are ready when they've shrunk considerably and have lost about 5 times their weight. The stems will also be a little bit crackly. They won't always snap when you bend them though. A lot of the time you don't even need to cut the bud. You can just push it against the grain and it'll pop right off the stem. Pro tip, try not to touch the top of the bag or the bag at all with the glove that you were using to touch the bud. That way when you're handling in the future, you won't get your fingers sticky. Alright, what's she gonna weigh? I make sure I've zeroed out the scale with a Ziploc bag. And 88 grams. I'm happy with that. A month or so ago, I had locked in my guess at 79 grams in the community Discord. You'll find a link in the description if you'd like to join. Well, the Jackherer definitely had a bountiful yield. I was thinking she'd yield around 200 grams, but with the smaller buds, I was a little bit off. $136 grams. Not bad. To cure the bud, over the next 1 to 2 weeks, I'll open the bags once daily and waft in fresh air while I toss around the buds for around 10 to 15 seconds. You'll know that the buds have stabilized when they stop sticking to each other so much. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like if you did, and subscribe to stay tuned for my next video. Thank you again to Spiderfarmer for sponsoring this video. Make sure to use code BASEMENT for a discount.